Hey everybody, Nick Espinosa, your chief security fanatic here. Don't forget to subscribe. And today we are going to once again talk about Microsoft Recall because it's still a privacy disaster. Now, I've been talking about this since Microsoft first pitched this and then rolled it out disastrously only to recall the recall, and then they brought it back out saying it's quote unquote improved, but not so much. These are the kinds of things that really erode trust that users are going to have in Windows. And I think, quite frankly, Microsoft is starting to kill the Windows platform by integrating all of these things. Not to mention the fact they're integrating a lot of cloud stuff. I don't want your weather alerts, Microsoft, on my desktop, and I shouldn't have to disable that by default. I digress. Let's talk about this. Now, Avram Pilch of The Register actually did some testing on this and has a pretty solid write-up. So I'm going to basically be cribbing from him, obviously, inserting my own thoughts. But if you don't know what I'm talking about, Microsoft Recall is an application, it's AI, quote unquote, that basically takes screenshots of what you do on your computer, and so you can search it for later. So essentially, let's say 2 months ago, you looked up, a recipe on how to cook chicken or something like that, and 2 months later, you completely forgot about it and said, hey, Recall, what was that chicken recipe I looked up? It will be able to give you a screenshot of that and essentially tell you where, you found this and where you can go. That's actually really handy. But here's the thing. It's supposed to have a filter that prevents it from screenshotting sensitive info like credit card numbers. This is one of the big issues that we had. Originally, Microsoft said you could opt out of things. So in other words, let's say you have a password manager, you could tell Recall, opt out of the password manager so it won't take pictures every time you launch the application. But how many people are actually going to do that for absolutely everything they do? And there are some things that basically are all or none. If you opt out of a web browser, then you're going to be opting out of everything, including chicken recipes or personal stuff you wouldn't want to be in Recall. So basically, Avram ran some tests, and it's got some failures here, and so we're going to talk about this. So there's no way, for the record, that Microsoft Recall would know how to avoid potentially damaging entries into things like your web history or what you want to keep private. So you might be looking up, ESPN for the sports score or whatever, but you may also be going to websites that display your medical history, personal messages back and forth through like a Facebook Messenger or whatever. All of this then is being captured through Recall. It's not discerning. And what's just as bad as that is that the screenshots that Recall takes are available to anybody that actually has your PIN number, even via remote access. So if an attacker remotes in and is remotely controlling your desktop and they get access to your PIN, boom, they've got a whole bunch of sensitive data that you wouldn't want to share with anybody. So let's look at the nuts and bolts of this, because to find out just how well this sensitive information filter works, Avram basically took a computer with Recall enabled and tried to enter a whole bunch of different types of personal data and combinations to see what would happen here. And so basically Recall did, for the record, correctly identify and exclude a lot of things, some financial data, some passwords, social security numbers on occasion, etc., but it goes deeper than that. So when he logged into his bank account, Recall basically took a picture of his bank's homepage and several screens where his balance and deposits all appeared. That's not something you'd want somebody to have access to if you're keeping your banking private. On the upside, it correctly did exclude a screen with the account and routing numbers in it. So again, it's hit or miss. An attacker would know which bank that anybody uses, how much they have, but not enough basically to, let's say, route things out of it. So Recall did a pretty good job with shopping forms as well. So Avram went to Microsoft, tried to add a credit card, and it took a screenshot of basically the card number and CVC, like the 3-digit code and the date, all those fields, but it took blank shots. In other words, it understood that there was a sensitive credit card there on the Microsoft site and didn't actually take a picture of that. But when he created his own fake web page with credit card entry forms, with the letter CC colon in front of it, the software did filter that out. But when he removed the text, such as checkout page or enter payment info, leaving just the credit card number, expiration date, and the 3-digit code, Recall captured all of it. In other words, it's looking for those key things that say credit card or CC or any one of those combinations. And if it's not seeing that, it's just recording whatever it is. So here we are. This is what we're talking about. It's not a true data loss prevention. So the password blocking on this was mixed as well. he opened up Google Chrome's password manager. Recall filtered that out. And essentially, Recall also gets credit for not screenshotting sensitive info, even when he took a screenshot of it in the snipping tool and displayed that on screen. So in other words, he went to the snipping tool, he snipped, let's say, his credit card info, and Recall saw that, sensed that, and did not basically save that info in the snip either. So it also, for the record, worked when he created a text file with basically the words username and password in it. It filtered that out. But if he just listed usernames and passwords with no framing whatsoever, it captured all of it. Again, just looking for keywords, not actual data loss prevention. And that is part of data loss prevention, but not nearly enough. So we can't expect Recall to know if a text file is full of passwords, if there's no headers and all of that. And yeah, no, don't keep your passwords in a text file. But there are going to be people out there that are going to have lists of these things, whether it's in Excel or something else, and it's not necessarily labeled password, and it's going to be a password, and it's going to be there, and a human would be able to discern that, even if Recall can't, if a human got in and was looking around. There are so many ways that people basically store stuff or refer to personal data, so it's absolutely impossible that Recall can catch all of this. So another example that he gave was he entered a social security number into a Word document, and he put the prefix mySS hashtag or pound next to it, and the tool captured basically only the first 3 digits of his social security number. But when he made the prefix SOC colon, it had everything. It captured everything. That's the point here, right? He logged into his PayPal account. It captured the login screen showing his username but not his password. Basically, it correctly avoided screenshotting the account page, which showed his transactions. But if a bad actor had his username, then there's a very real possibility that he could be phished, something like that. So in another instance, he had a photo of his passport visible and Recall avoided it. But when the photo was partially covered by another window, Recall took that screenshot. So this isn't perfect. And my point here is simply this. They've had pretty lax security controls around Recall since the beginning. Originally, they were just using standard like file and folder permissions that essentially a first-year IT student knows how to get around by basically stripping the attributes and just adding in who you want to gain access to this. Then they've got a PIN number here. But again, it's not nearly as secure as it is. It's not perfect. And if you're going to be using this and you're going to forget to, let's say, exclude things, this filter is not going to catch everything. You have to expect that if you're saying, oh, yes, please take pictures and shots of like my Chrome browser and stuff like that, you're going to get medical history in there. You're going to get potentially damaging messages that don't say my credit card number is or my social security number is. This is a perpetual problem. And Microsoft is basically putting this, into the hands of the world. And they're basically also saying, oh, well, we can put this in the cloud as well, even though right now Recall is on the desk. The desktop itself, it's on the computer itself. It's not going to the cloud from what I understand, but there's no reason why they couldn't put it there and then start training an AI on there, even though they say they won't. How many companies have been caught saying we're not training on your data and they're training on the data? Amazon, take your pick, Google, et cetera, et cetera. So this is, I think, of deep concern. It makes me not want to go to Windows 11 or use Windows 11, and I've got various machines of various versions of operating systems, Microsoft or not. And this is, I think, one of those things that is going to keep me up at night, especially if I'm not realizing or even remembering that maybe I'm writing a very sensitive email to a client that has a lot of compliance standards or issues, or we're talking about very sensitive things regarding what they're doing. Well, none of that is a password, but a lot of that is a potential data breach for one of my clients if that were to ever get out. These are things that we have to consider longitudinally. And if you're using Microsoft Recall, understand these things. And if you have a Windows 11 machine, turn it off. If you can uninstall it, uninstall it. So I'll leave you with that. This is a privacy nightmare. Thanks to Avram Pilch of the Register for basically doing these simple tests and showing just, I think, the gaps that this still has. Not to mention, I think Microsoft is pretty lax on the security side with these things, but here we are. So I guess you can't say you haven't been told. And if you're using Recall, best of luck to you. And please like, share, follow me here on Facebook and Twitter at NickAESP. And please feel free to subscribe to me at YouTube so you don't have to recall anything. You just go to my YouTube channel or my SoundCloud or whatever, and you can get all my stuff. And as always, stay safe, stay online, and please attempt to stay private, informed, and secure. Take care.